Chapter 2. Operation Tong Le Chan. At first glance, Tong Le Chan might sound like the name of a beautiful and talented Chinese woman immortalized in history books. However, this name held immense strategic importance during the scorching summer of 1972. Several North Vietnamese regular divisions, supported by tanks and heavy artillery, advanced from the Cambodian and lower Laotian borders along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, aiming to capture Binh Long and Phuoc Long provinces. Their goal was to establish a government they called the Liberation Front of South Vietnam, gaining international support and putting immense pressure on the Republic of Vietnam's government in Saigon. Tong Le Chan was a strategic location, a tactical hill approximately 5 miles southwest of An Loc City, northwest of Saigon. Positioned on a high elevation, it was guarded by a battalion of elite South Vietnamese Rangers. This hill was not only the eyes and ears of An Loc but also of Saigon itself, as it monitored the movement of North Vietnamese troops and war machines heading towards Saigon, potentially threatening Binh Duong, Lai Thu and Bien Hoa, where the 3rd Corps Tactical Zone headquarters was located. For these tactical and strategic reasons, Tong Le Chan became a sharp thorn in the side of the North Vietnamese, something they were determined to remove at all costs. Before the battle, Tong Le Chan was a serene hill surrounded by vast green forests, with a winding stream at its base, resembling a peaceful landscape painting. If not for the war, it would have remained unnoticed, much like other remote places that suddenly became infamous due to brutal battles, places like Ben Het, Dak Co, Dak Pate and Dak Tu. These locations, once unknown to city dwellers, became household names, frequently mentioned in horrifying war reports on the radio, television, and in newspapers, shocking the conscience of the world. The scars of war had faded into the background of memory, almost forgotten. But this evening, those memories were reignited within me, as I unexpectedly met comrades from my old unit after more than 20 long years of separation. The hero of Tong Le Chan, former Captain Le Van Cao, the flight leader of the 237th Chinook Squadron, still had the same slender build and the ever-present open smile that greeted his comrades. We reunited at a gathering in San Jose, California, organized by a few former members of the 237th Loi Tan Squadron, including Nguyen Van Tien, Nguyen Vu and Nguyen Van Mai from Da Nang, along with the wives of Vu and Mai. It was a great joy and pride for me to meet again with these men, with whom I had once shared life and death experiences, including shared rations of rice and pork under the blistering sun in the battlefields of Tay Ninh. Seeing each other again in this foreign land, we had aged a little. Our lives had changed significantly, but the camaraderie remained as warm and strong as ever. Tun was still as charming as ever. Ngoc remained the playboy. Vu was still lively and youthful. Mai still fancied himself as Henry Chuck, and Tien, having recently arrived, was still adjusting with some apprehension. Senior member Mai, the former squadron leader from Da Nang, had just retired from IBM and looked as dignified as ever, though perhaps he needed some freshness to prevent further hair loss. We shared drinks, reminiscing from 3 p.m. until nearly 7 p.m., before parting ways, as some of the men had to attend a wedding that evening. We agreed to meet again at the Mini Club at 9:30 p.m. Senior member Mai took me home to visit his family, while Chu Tu Cao, a term of endearment for Captain Cao, went home to fetch his wife and children. Chu Tu Cao was incredibly lucky to have a young and beautiful wife who not only supported him, but also gave him 2 wonderful, well-behaved children. Senior member Mai, possibly saving his energy for his wife later that night, went to rest, leaving me and Cao to continue drinking and talking late into the night about everything from the sky to the earth and the thrilling stories of past military operations. I had known Cao since the establishment of the 1st Chinook Squadron, the 237th Loi Tan, around 1970-1971. He was one of the young, eager pilots fresh out of school, full of enthusiasm for every mission, while we, though not yet old, were considered veterans by comparison. During the summer of 1972, the battles in the 3rd Corps Tactical Zone grew increasingly fierce. An Loc City endured thousands of artillery shells day and night, reducing homes and streets to rubble. The residents abandoned their belongings and fled toward Chanton and Saigon. The outpost at Tong Le Chan defended by a battalion of South Vietnamese Rangers, had been isolated for weeks by a North Vietnamese regiment lurking at the base of the hill. Supply and medevac helicopters were under severe threat from SAW-7 heat-seeking missiles and anti-aircraft guns, making daytime landings nearly impossible. C-130 transport planes attempted to drop supplies and medicine by parachute, but most of the cargo was blown off course into enemy-controlled areas. The Viet Cong regularly bombarded the hill with artillery, turning it into a barren landscape. Yet, the courageous brown beret South Vietnamese Rangers dug deep into the earth like venomous snakes, valiantly repelled wave after wave of human wave assaults by the Viet Cong. The outpost commander, Lieutenant Colonel Nguyen, requested air support to bring in reinforcements and evacuate the wounded so he could continue the fight. The General Staff of the South Vietnamese Armed Forces ordered the 3rd Corps Air Division commander to assign the giant Chinook helicopters of the 237th Squadron to carry out this suicidal mission. Loi Ton 01, the squadron leader of the 237th, received the secret order and convened a closed meeting with a group of experienced combat pilots to select volunteers. After Loi Ton 01 explained the mission, the room fell silent, heavy with tension and a sense of foreboding. No one spoke a word, adding or subtracting from the instructions. I looked at all the pilots and aircrew, my eyes lowering as my mind went numb, thinking to myself, they're about to make us sacrificial lambs. In truth, none of us were afraid of dying or wanted to avoid dangerous missions, but the frustration was unbearable. It seemed that our commanders either didn't understand the technical capabilities of the Chinook, or were afraid of responsibility, leading to this grave mistake. It wasn't a matter of political, psychological, or tactical considerations. The mission could have been accomplished with smaller helicopters like the U-1H, each carrying 10 soldiers at a time and landing in different locations over 5 attempts. The U-1H was designed for such surprise tactics deep in enemy territory, with the ability to maneuver quickly and land troops and supplies within a few seconds, minimizing exposure to enemy fire. In contrast, a massive Chinook CH-47, carrying 50 soldiers, landing on a hilltop outpost with no cover, surrounded by North Vietnamese regulars entrenched in a maze of trenches armed with advanced Soviet and Czech anti-aircraft guns, 82mm mortars, and 122mm artillery with pinpoint accuracy, was a recipe for disaster. Even if the enemy was blind, deaf, and asleep, the slow approach and departure of the Chinook would take at least 200 seconds, far too long to avoid being shot down. To compare, an F-5 jet could dive, drop its bombs, and pull up in a matter of seconds, yet could still be easily shot down by SAW-7s or anti-aircraft fire. The lumbering Chinook, twice or 3 times the size of a jet, with thousands of liters of JP-4 fuel on board, could be a massive target, turning into a blazing torch at the slightest spark, killing not only the crew but also the 50 soldiers inside. In this narrative, I don't intend to criticize any individual commander, as orders came from the highest level. I merely highlight the mistakes in the tactical use of mechanical warfare. But in the military, orders must be followed. If one survives without injury, it's considered a blessing from the gods above. After a tense minute of silence, Loi Ton 01 stated that if no one volunteered, he would have to assign someone to this critical mission. Time seemed to slow down. I asked what the primary objective of the mission was, though I was the operations officer of the squadron at the time. Loi Ton 01 refused to divulge the details, maintaining the secrecy of the landing zone. When he finished speaking, I saw Captain Lavon Cao, the leader of Flight 1, raise his hand to volunteer, followed by Captain Nguyen Ba Hung, the leader of Flight 2. We still needed a flight engineer, a gunner, and an escort. Sergeant Nguyen Van Tran and Corporal Nguyen Van Hoang also volunteered. I recall that several other officers and non-commissioned officers volunteered as well, but in the end, the crew selected for the mission consisted of Aircraft Commander, Captain Cao; Co-pilot, Captain Hung; Flight Engineer, Sergeant Tran; Gunner, Corporal Hoang; Escort, unfortunately I don't remember his name. The meeting ended around 4 p.m. To maintain the mission's secrecy, The squadron was ordered to stay on base until the mission was completed. I took the volunteer crew members to the mess hall in the NCO's quarters on the airbase for dinner. At 7 p.m. on December 26, 1972, the aircraft took off from Bien Hoa Airfield, maintaining radio contact with CNC, Command and Control Center, on the FM frequency as they headed for An Loc to receive a briefing and orders from the friendly unit. As it was late December, the Christmas season, the sun set earlier than usual, and the last golden rays of sunlight faded behind the airfield, leaving me alone to bid farewell to the crew. In the last World War, the Japanese kamikaze pilots were honored before their final missions with a ceremonial sake toast from a senior officer before flying off to their deaths. But who was there to send off our men? Where was the honor guard to salute them? I knew they didn't need such pomp and circumstance, but with iron determination, they were ready to sacrifice their lives for their motherland, willingly accepting a mission to land in what could only be described as hell on earth. The aircraft disappeared into the twilight, heading northwest. We hope you enjoyed the excerpt from this chapter. The complete audiobook of The Last Flight Out by Nguyen Van Ba can be purchased on platforms like Google Play and others. Please subscribe to this channel for more content like this.